This whole polyphonic perception thing is driving me nuts as a musician because it's wrong in two major ways. The first is that, like, what you're listening to is not polyphonic. Buckle in, we're gonna learn about musical texture. Okay, so the, like, simplest texture, I guess, to describe is monophonic, where there's just, like, one voice or one melody singing or playing. So an example of a monophonic or like unison texture would be if you're at someone's birthday party and everyone sings happy birthday and you're all singing the same exact melody. Unless you have like musicians in the crowd who like to harmonize, most of the time people will always sing the same happy birthday melody. That's monophonic or like a unison texture. A polyphonic texture, which is not super common nowadays in most music, is where you have many different melodies happening at the same time. One example of this like would be Around. So most everyone has sung Around at some point in their life. If you've done like row your boat in Around, where like the first person goes row your boat gently down the stream and then keeps going, and then the second person, once they get to stream, goes row your boat gently down the stream, row, and then you just keep going, and then you're singing kind of on top of each other, and the different like parts of the melody line up in different ways to create fun little chords. That's polyphony. Also, like, you should really just listen to Renaissance polyphony. It's gorgeous. Like, listen to some Palestrina. I love Palestrina. But that's polyphony, and that's the thing that bothers me the most about this like polyphonic perception thing is that the people who are saying, oh, I have polyphonic perception, the music they're using to illustrate it is not polyphonic, it's actually homophonic. So homophonic textures are what we tend to call melody plus accompaniment, and that's most pop music nowadays is melody plus accompaniment. So pop star, just like she's singing the main melody, maybe she has some backup singers singing harmonies, but you know that the harmonies are not the melody. They're just supporting that main melody. And then all the other instruments, while they are doing maybe different rhythms than what the main singer is singing, they're still not their own like standout melodies. They're still a main melody for the song, and all of the other instruments and voices are serving to hold up that melody. Similar to, but different than homophonic is homorhythmic, which is where every voice or every instrument in a musical texture is using the same exact rhythm but doing different notes. So you hear this a lot in choral music, where like if you've ever been to like an old school church where they have like hymn books and stuff, where everyone is singing the same exact rhythm, but they're singing different notes at the same time to just go like chord and chord and chord and whatever rhythm that the melody is doing. You still have a clear melody though, so you can have a song that is both homophonic and homorhythmic, but it doesn't necessarily have to be homorhythmic to be homophonic. So most of the music that you would hear nowadays, which is like a main singer or even like a group of singers, is going to be homophonic. This is just if you're curious. One that we don't really hear much of in the West is heterophonic music, which is where everyone has like the same melody, but they sing it in different rhythmic durations and at different times. So it would be like if everyone was singing happy birthday, but they made all of the different durations of the melody different. So if someone's saying like happy birthday to you, and someone next to you is singing the same exact melody, but just like a lot slower, maybe like happy birth, while you're going happy birthday to you, and that gives us a heterophonic texture. That's the first thing. So that's like the first major complaint I have about this term polyphonic perception, and I hate to complain about it because I love that people are talking about music and like the different layers of music, but polyphony is not, like polyphony and polyphonic is not the right term to be used here. The other part is just that they're making this into a special type of perception when it's a type of perception and a skill that pretty much everyone has. For example, if you've ever like gotten coffee with a friend, and so you're in like a busy coffee shop and there are multiple conversations going on, if you're able to like tune into the conversation you're having, and then maybe like your friend gets up to go to the bathroom and you're able to like listen in on the people sitting next to you, like, oh my god, that guy just like broke up with that girl and he was so mean, and then oh my god, that guy's cheating on her. Like, if you're able to pick up on all the gossip around you and tune into different conversations by just like paying attention to them, you have this skill. Of course there are exceptions. If you have an auditory processing disorder, like of course this is going to be more difficult for you, but everyone basically has this skill, and it's something that we even train for most musicians. Like the deeper you go into like training as a musician, the better your ability to single out instruments is going to be. There are also studies showing that you tend to tune into your primary instrument more. So if you're a singer, you probably listen to the vocalist more. If you're a pianist, you probably listen to like piano more. String players listen to strings more often. Like that is like your default. Like when you're listening to a song, you're going to listen to that element first. And of course you're hearing it within the scope of the song as a whole, but when you zoom into smaller, like finer detail things, like on a second or third listen, you're going to primarily listen first for like the things that are most familiar to you, because that's part of what it means to be a human and to like interact with the world around you and perceive things, is to start to categorize them. And it's more efficient for your brain to take the things that are familiar and be like, okay, this is the same, this is the same, this is the same, start there, and then start dealing with the stuff that you're like, oh, I've never heard this before, or I'm not familiar with that. It's something that musicians train, but anyone can train it. And that's actually what I tried to get at with my entire platform, is like music theory is a practice of empathy, because it gives us words to describe the different things we experience when we listen to music. So if I tend to listen to like the violins more, for instance, and I hear this thing that maybe you don't pick up on because you're not a violinist and you're not tuned into that, music theory is like a language that we can use to talk about our different perceptions of it, of like, oh my god, like my favorite part of this song was here when we had that like huge violin swell, and maybe you don't really listen to the violins as much and you're listening more to the lyrics, and you're like, no, my favorite part was the bridge when this happened. And so even just those words like the violin swell, like the crescendo, or talking in a formal sense about the bridge, those are music theory terms that we use to talk about our musical experiences. And when we listen to each other talking about our own musical experiences, then we can hear from another person's perspective, which is a practice of empathy, like being like, oh my god, okay, next time I listen, I'm gonna listen to the bridge and trying to experience what you're experiencing. So very unorganized ramble aside, I am grateful that like this idea of listening to different elements in music is coming up, because it is something we can all do. It is something that we can practice. It's something that a lot of people do practice, and it's something that brings us together as people, because we can start to talk about our unique experiences with like perceiving music. It just really doesn't need its own name, like polyphonic perception, aside from just maybe calling it musical perception, or just listening actively to music, which is really interesting, because it wasn't really until like the digital age that we got this idea of passive versus active listening, because before like records and radio existed, you couldn't really listen to music unless you like bought a ticket and went to go listen to someone play music. So it was a very active thing, and the only thing you were doing while you were listening to music was listening to the music. And nowadays most people listen to music more passively, where they're listening to it while they're doing work, while they're mowing the lawn, while they're just like existing, and their main focus isn't the music. So it's this really interesting like dichotomy that we wouldn't even be having this conversation like a long time ago. But anyway, all of this to say, polyphonic perception's not a good name for this phenomenon. It's really just like active listening, or even just like musical perception. So let's just leave it at that and cut the whole like I have polyphonic perception thing. And if you like to talk about music and music theory and stuff like that, you should stick around, because I talk about that a lot.